Well, hey Anita, I don't know. I smile almost every time I start talking to one of my friends. I guess it's natural. I wanted to invite you to join me. I've been calling these things silver linings, just kind of playing on my last name, and then looking for a silver lining in everything that's been happening in the world with the coronavirus and COVID-19. And really, what my friend Stefan, who I talked to um, last time, he basically said that what he felt this was making my relationships visible, because I know that when I show up as all of my relationships. Like I don't show up as an individual. I show up with all the encounters, the family, the ancestors, the religion, all the different things that make up me are a network of relationships, and the same with you. And whenever two people or more get together, there's just this infinite community that happens, even when it's just two people. And so I've just been expanding on that and inviting people in. And I'm glad that you are able to be up here too. And I can see your book in the background, The Four Sacred Gifts, which is how you and I got connected originally, because you were doing a living room conversation on forgiveness. And someone said, Pedro, you're in the forgiveness business. Will you co-host with Anita? And I was like, sure, why not? And it was just a great time to connect with you. So today, I would love for us to talk a little bit about forgiveness. And then I love the way you use the word relations in your book. So I'd like for us to talk about that. So if you have anything you want to share, just jumping off the top of your mind, let's get it.
Yeah. Well, I think when you say relations, at this time in particular, where we're all sheltering in solidarity with our own lives and the lives of everyone around us, the relations becomes higher and a higher awareness to all of us. So I think the phrase that I think you're talking about is a Lakota term called all my relations. And Mitake Oyasin. And I grew up, of course, being indigenous Aztec and spending time with the Osage, heard that term. And I love it because what it means is that we're far more than what's here. What's here is amazing. What's inside, I'm this sacred being, with purpose and things to be here. But I'm also, part of what makes me is what you were saying at the beginning is all these connections. So when things are happening, I know, yes, I can deal with what's happening, but I'm far more than the circumstances that we're in. I'm part of this huge hoop of life that's not only the two-leggeds, but also the animals and nature and, and the ancestors and those who still not born, the generations to come. And that makes that I have great trust in and motivates me, compels me in a positive way to get into action where to make some positive change, starting with me, starting with the never-ending work of constantly, healing and forgiving and, dreaming inside myself as well.
When you were talking, I had I started having this flashback of, I had, what they call like a dark night of the soul, back when I was 23 or something, 23, 24. And I had like a little bit of a riff with the church I was a part of. And I was wrestling with God because I had conflated God with church. So I thought, well, God, I didn't know that I thought this. I always thought like, oh yeah, I love God. I want to know more about God, things like that. But I had not realized how I had conflated it with church, with certain types of worship services, with the scriptures, as if they were the being of God itself. And so when I was having this break with the church and I was trying to reconcile it, and I was just, thinking and asking God a lot of questions, and I was stopped at a traffic light, and the scripture passage says, "Be ye one, even as God and I are one," or something like that. Went in my mind, and I started thinking about oneness, and I just could feel this sense of connectedness with everything. And then I felt this sense of lament also, because I was like, I don't really know how to talk about it in words. And I didn't know people at the time who could communicate it in words either. And so it was like I felt this oneness and this aloneness at the same time. And then but I decided that I would just embrace that feeling and then live from there. And then over time, I met people just like here and there that would come into my life and could articulate it in different ways from their traditions or from their understanding or from their struggles. And what you're talking about reminded me of that, all of our
Yeah.
relations.
Yeah. That oneness is such a powerful thing. I mean, it gets said a lot, but when you really understand and know what it means, it even it changed for me that I realized at a certain point, I just don't say I'm ever alone. I'm not. I get lonely.
Hmm.
That's a human condition.
Hmm.
And then when I go right back to understanding my sense of the world, how I make meaning, and just really going back into my heart, then I go, oh yeah, oneness. And and of course that's what drove me, that whole oneness about writing the book, that you're surrounded by authors, because I wrote corporate reports and designed trainings for diversity inclusion and other kinds of things, culture change. But I I was compelled, because it wasn't easy writing that book. It was
Right.
very personal, intimate, and I knew it had to be authentically true for it to serve people,
Hmm.
to inspire them. And so, but that unity is really kept me going through a lot of the harder stuff around forgiveness and healing and the dark night of the soul that you talk about. When I
Hmm.
was even writing that book, I don't know, I'm telling you this, it's not to scare you away from writing your book, because you have messages, you need to get them out. But I would go through, as I was sitting here at this desk writing, when I would go to remember to write down, I would literally if I threw up at that time, I'd go in the bathroom and throw up. I mean, everything of it.
Yeah.
Everything was so, and what I realized, it was a healing process too. And so when
Hmm.
people talk about ghostwriters, I'm like, I don't think so. That's like saying, okay, I want some muscles. Pedro, you go do some push-ups for me. It's not gonna work. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could imagine that, because I wrote one poetry book and it was like I was bearing my soul or whatever. And
Mhm.
I did it because I needed to. It wasn't like I necessarily wanted to. I just needed to at that time. And once I got it out, it just kind of has its own life. And then the life of it for that particular expression, it kind of just like lived its life. And maybe it's going to resurrect, who knows? But it took me to so far on a journey, and then I went and started living even a more expressive life. But it was definitely something that I had to do. You know,
Yeah.
it was like,
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. Finish. You
no, I
have.
was saying it was healthy for me to do it. Had I not done it, I think I would
Yes.
just felt like blocked inside of myself.
Yes. That's the part that I wanted to make sure, so the people who are watching and listening, that they had to, it sounds like had to, a burden. However, it would be more of a burden not to respond to
Oh
that.
yeah,
That's what I know now for sure. All the times that I was like, you want me to do what? Yeah, I'm going to, no, what? And it's like, don't worry about the how, just go forward. And
right.
it, always the way things open up, and it happens. So, I wanted my messages, the elders' messages, Indigenous elders from all over the world of mine, to get out in a bigger way. And once I wrote that book, I was like, oh no, I don't know how to market this stuff. I don't know how to, all
Right.
of a sudden it all just started coming, including you. It's just like, it all started happening. And then it's like, oh, I'll take it there. I'll take it there. And it's like, that tells you that you are doing what you're supposed to. It doesn't necessarily mean all the wants,
Right.
not everybody gets rich. I mean, all the whole stuff about, well, if you're a basketball player, you're going to get rich, or a football player, or Anita, if you're going to be, it's about a fulfillment that's beyond, not that money's bad. I don't want to say that, but it's beyond that. It's just
Yeah.
really fulfilling. So I love that you hear the call and you did the poetry.
Yeah, one of my friends, we were talking about it, and I said, he said, "Oh, don't you write and like do stuff so that you can like get people's attention and stuff like that?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, why do you like write so much stuff?" And I was like, a flower doesn't put out its fragrance for humans to smell it. The flower's not like, oh, I'm gonna put my fragrance out there so humans can come sniff me and chop me up and put me in bouquets. it's just doing what it feels led to do in its natural expression. It just doesn't stop it. And if the flower were supposed to put forth the fragrance and it didn't put forth the fragrance, that would be something that was off, you know,
Yeah.
which kind of is like, I don't know if you know this story from the Bible where Jesus like kills his, it's a
But,
crazy story, but it's
huh?
like, Jesus is like, oh, I'm hungry. And then he comes on a fig tree and the fig tree doesn't have any figs on it. So then they say Jesus like curses the fig tree and it like shrivels up or something. And for some reason that came to my mind, like, I don't 100% understand how to interpret that story, but when I hear it, I think about that there are things that there is a way for them to be, and when the thing and when you're being how you're supposed to be, like a lion is supposed to roar, and a flower gives off a fragrance, and a bee has a stinger, and when they're being what they are, then the whole universe supports them being what they are, and expression comes freely, and it's in that resistance of being what you are that is creates harm. We don't
Yeah.
think about it as creating harm when we hold ourselves back, but we are creating harm because we're part of this oneness. So if the trees were like, I'm
Yes.
not giving off oxygen, I don't want to participate in this enterprise,
Yeah, trouble.
killing off the humans, you know what I mean? So there's some relationship that's constantly happening through creativity, and it draws in relationships, energy, whatever it is, to
Yeah.
continue in that the fullness of that expression.
Yeah.
And you can't control it. You just are with it. I don't know. That's
Just
how
being.
I understand
It's like when you were saying that, I'm thinking, yeah, because it starts with how you be. And it sounds weird. And especially, I don't know about for you, maybe it wasn't that way. But as being a person of color, sometimes I would really get into stuff, even very young. And some people look at me like, kind of strange. Like, what, like, you shouldn't be into that stuff. Yeah, that's
Oh yeah,
somebody else's stuff. And I was like, no, because if this really is true, if it's how I be is manifested out here, then my gosh, then I have a big responsibility. And that's what the elders taught us. Like, you can be good medicine or you can be bad medicine. And
hmm
what you're describing is good medicine, doing what it is and being how you're supposed to be in right relationship, so that there's this reciprocity and there's this thriving, loving world. And if it didn't do that, that's why there's suffering, is because, I believe, and I'm not putting on anybody else, but for me, I create a lot of my suffering. And yes, there's systems and structures in place that stop people that look like me, that want to prevent us from succeeding. However, I don't accept it. I want to use my energy to help change it,
right,
to get through it, over it, under, whatever it is. But again, I think part of it, when we're really being what we're supposed to be, then it doesn't almost matter what people say to us,
right,
because it's what we respond to.
right,
And so that that feels good when you can trust in that, and then keep growing and messing up, because we're human. At least I do. And then I go, oh, look at that, look at that.
yeah. Yeah, and of course, like, I mean, as a black guy, there's a lot of things that I know. Like, I was kind of slow to catch on to some things when I was younger, which is probably was in my service. But where people made, the societal narratives of who I'm supposed to be and how I'm supposed to be, and I kind of was just like, no, I don't agree with that. I'm not going to participate, and not in that. And out of that choice not to participate in some things, some other things came in. And a lot of times I find that when we're handed these narratives, a lot of times we think that's the script we're supposed to just play into, and we don't have to. And it may mean that people will threaten us because their illusion that they're holding on is built upon this false paradigm.
Yeah.
So I think one has to decide for oneself, like, how we're going to choose to live in that moment, even if it's our last moment.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Whether we're going to evolve or not. I think it's really critical now. I don't mean to go gloomy. So I really want to name that with you, because you hold so strongly, as I do, the whole human being, the spirit, the body, the mind, the whole thing. There's so many suicides. I am getting so many from
oh, really?
friends. From
Yeah,
friends who are saying, "Can you talk to my daughter? Can you talk?" All of and I'm like, "What?" And they're saying, "No, they're just so deeply." And I understand that, because that was part of my history as a teen too.
hmm
I'm so glad it didn't work. And and I just, you know, I understand that feeling. I know what that is when you truly think there is no hope.
Mm-hmm.
What I do know about that period too is a huge forgetting.
Yeah.
You've been blinded by the hurt, the pain, whatever it is, and start to conflate it with being your own identity. And that is not true.
Yeah. I mean,
There are always, even in the darkest nights, people are there for you. And I know you're there for people too.
yeah. No, I've been there too, and I did one sermon where I talked about a little bit, and it was just a glimmer, but that glimmer of taking myself out was enough to keep me. I can still sense it because it was like a perfect uh, orchestration of a lot of things happening at once. In this glimmer of a moment, I thought, oh, that man, I might as well just end this thing because it felt like I was trying so hard to live, beyond what the script was laid out for me. And I mean, I got a couple. I can say it real fast anyway. But basically, my dad gave me a gun because I was hanging out in the projects, and he just thought he was, protecting me.
Right.
And I didn't grow up with him, and I went to go live with him, and he didn't know I grew up going into projects. So he was like, "Why are you going into that neighborhood?" I was like, "I grew up going into those neighborhoods." So he's like, "Well, if you're going to go, take a gun." And I was like, "I don't want to," but I took it anyway. And then, so he gave me a gun. He was trying to be cool and bought me a low riding truck with rims and all this other
Oh,
stuff.
wow.
Like looked like, well, I had to pay him back, but he got it and was like, "Pay me back." But so I had this gun, this low riding truck. I was driving around this areas and stuff, and I was coming back from. I got in an argument with my ex, and I was driving in the rain, and I T-boned the guy. And it was their fault because they tried to beat the arrow, but the cops showed up, and when the cops showed up, it was 4 black dudes, and I was like, oh crap, and there was white cops, and then they were like, what y'all boys, blah blah blah. This was in Mississippi, and I was like, but before the cops came up, the guys got out of the car and they were angry, and my brain was like, I better grab this gun, but I didn't want to, but I didn't know what to do because it was more of them, it was just me. And then I thought I should grab it. And then I thought, no, I better not. And I'm glad I didn't, because then the cops came. And then the cops started, they didn't want to give a crap about us going black anyway. And we weren't that far from the hospital. And they were just like, if we go through this car, am I going to find anything that I shouldn't find? And I said, no, you're not. And then he was just like, well, can you make the car drive? And I said, yeah. And he said, then get out of here. And it was all jacked up. And one of the guys like, oh, I'm hurt. And then he said, well, walk to the hospital. And they just took off and left the guy. So their racism actually saved me. But in that window between the guys coming out and the cops coming in, my brain was like, grab the gun and shoot yourself in the head. Just blow your brains out real fast, and then you'll escape this. And that was like the thought that went through my mind. And it still hangs around me sometimes. I don't have that feeling I want to do it, but the memory was it was almost like how you see a movie where you see a scene and then it flashes like the scene didn't happen. It's like I felt like I did it and then I didn't do it, and I was like, whoa. So anyway, it's craziness, but the energy hangs around.
Yeah. So I'm finding a lot of these, I think for all of us, it's not just young people in this whole suicide. I think it's all of us, is that everyone wants to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to be acknowledged. It doesn't even mean agreement. They just want you to listen, to hear, and acknowledge. And there's, with everything being so divisive and crazy, and then all of a sudden slam, pause, then people are left and then need to deal with actually not only tight spaces and not going all that pattern, but actually bumping in and dealing with themselves.
Oh yeah.
And to have the tools to do that, you hope that you get it either, through either church or walking in nature or whatever. There's somebody in your life, some librarian or teacher, but or that you're just that kind of kid that came into the world that somehow, even in the toughest circumstances, just knows that they were meant to be something else.
Yeah.
I really appreciate, because I know in that time when it was tough for me, as I was thinking I was going to die, I was just praying, please don't let this work. Don't want to die. All the visions of these different people in my life, some I knew well, like my grandparents, but others was like a fifth grade teacher, and there was like this art person in the museum who I'd go on free days to wander, because it was libraries and museums that really saved me to know there was something else. So you
Same.
never know what that is. So with all of us is to know, again, when we don't have a worldview that we're just separate, alone, it's all about me, to understand the whole intimate interconnection. And we're not only talking spiritually here, science tells us that. I mean,
Right.
at a micro level, we're so interconnected. And that's why what happens in the Amazon impacts us, is what's happened in China impacts us, and all around the world, we're so connected. That's the message I hope comes through stronger than not. Even though, man, Pedro, it still looks pretty divisive, with even the fighting between, that the right people are the ones that are staying home and sheltered, and
Right.
oh, the right people are the ones that are saying, no, we have to support our families. And so it's like life against people being able to economically provide for their families. This is not a dichotomous.
Right.
This is not either. They're both. But we keep falling into that instead of, okay, this is a dilemma to manage, and both are important. So how do we do this? But immediately this separation. So
Yeah.
I want people to talk about it. I want people to figure out,
I
there's
think
another way.
we have to build that capacity for cognitive dissonance, which is
Yeah.
not very prevalent in our society. We have this like this or that, right or wrong, and all these things, and we don't think about building our capacities. We understand in a physical sense, like if we're working out, we know that the only way to build your muscle is through resistance training. So you
Yeah.
have to have an opposing force working against you to work for you in an expansion of your physical person. It's the same thing for your mental person and your spiritual person. That if you don't have those energies that you think are working against you, are potentially working for you if you understand the nature of the relationship. Like if a kid was being born into the world, if it's not positive and negative feedback
Oh, yeah.
for the mom to push them through, from what
Right.
I hear,
Happen.
that baby's not coming out. So it's written in the fabric of nature how to be in this way, but we just kind of get caught up and we think like the positive side is the right side, what we call positive. And I can experience that in my own inner being, and I struggle to articulate it. I do my best to try to just live it, and trust that when the moment comes, I will be whatever I need to be for the relationships to be expansive, because that's what I'm living into.
I think you have to add a phrase to what you're just saying,
Yeah.
that you have trouble articulating up to now, because you've articulated everything very clearly. I
Yeah.
think I think you're still shedding an old image, but the reality is you're very clear, and I'm bet other people who are watching and listening are going, "Ah, I can relate to this," because it is about all this. That's it. In many ways, yes, we have all our differences, but we also have amazing similarities,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that is so potent there. And I think one of the things that we were talking about before too was the thing that blocks us being in our wholeness, I think, are all those hurts and mistreatments, whether they were little ones and
Hmm.
cumulative, or huge ones like against whole races of people or whole countries, and genocide, all the different things, slavery, all those things. Is that forgiveness? uh, Forgiveness is when we can forgive those horrific things that happen. It's really not about the other. Eventually it does if you go the whole round, but it's really about loving yourself. That's what I found with my own forgiveness, is that no, I started identifying too much with the hurts and pains as if that was me instead of my circumstance, instead of that weight that I was gaining strength. And so then when I realized, wait a minute, I am more than this. I'm more
Right.
than the abuse I had. I'm more than the racial murder of my father and the economic poverty. What? This is not. And when I could do that, I came out of my own self-love,
Hmm.
but I had to listen. And it came from supportive people, people who showed up. And actually, before the people showed up, because I wasn't real trusting when I was real little of a lot of people, but I trusted the trees and I trusted the sun. And some of the darkest times that I had after being like beaten or something, I remember one time I was blotting up on my leg, a little bit of blood from the beating I got, and this one ray of sunlight came in through the window and landed right on the bloody part. And there was something that happened. I was only 9 years old, but
Mhm.
something was being communicated like, this isn't all there is.
Right.
This is, the sun is here. And
Hmm.
this, what you're experiencing, is not all of it. And when we can share that and have people understand, it's not about not changing the racist structures or the
Hmm.
sexist structures or the what all the isms that exist, you
Right.
know, that but it means that we're going to put our energy on that rather than all the hurts and mistreatments the way we hoped it would have been. Instead saying, now release that so I can use my energy for now and for where I want to go in the future generations too.
Yeah. Yeah. I make my mind. I don't force myself to try to control like the outcomes.
Yeah.
I just like I can't control what comes out. I can control what I put in.
Yes.
And if I put in a certain amount of love and things like that, and be aware that I'm not gonna figure it all out. I'm not gonna be like protected in every circumstance, and like people aren't gonna they may not respect me, but that's their problem, not mine, or whatever. I still have responsibility for how I show up, no matter what comes toward me. That's what I choose to believe.
Yeah, the response. Your
Yeah.
response, exactly right. I mean, that's what it is. So one of the fun things that I'm seeing in this time that people, my own and everyone I'm seeing, realization how just like water and air and nutrition and rest, community is so critical. So people are doing everything. These Zooms are nonstop,
Yeah.
the phone calls to people. I've talked to people I haven't heard from for years. All
Yeah.
of a sudden we're back at, people, because people realize, and every single community I'm part of, we're doing Zoom calls,
Mhm.
and and it's the power of just even seeing someone that
Mhm.
we realize that, yes, that this is part of being a human being, a part, it's life-giving to understand that. And then I'm hoping people go further and connect the dots to see that, hey, the reason we're survival too is because of the earth, because of the water, because of the dirt that we can grow crops. The dirt's got to be good dirt so that we get the crops. But I'm just looking out of my window over here since I'm above Boulder and I can see Denver. This is probably, I- when I first moved here in the 70s, I could see the different buildings in Denver from the
Mhm.
foothills of Boulder, but mostly it was smoggy and and or snow is the only time now. But for the last 8 weeks, I can tell you each building down there. I can see it. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
wow, and the birds and the bears have been coming to our house. And, I know they're always around, but now they're like, wow, we've made room for these other relations. And it's very cool. So I think as we choose to go back, I know people talk about and the big question is, when are we gonna get back to normal? Well, no, normal, I think it must be like our grandparents knew with the Depression. There was no normal after that. That changed you. Just like world wars, that changed you. I think this is a big change for
Oh,
everybody, no matter what age you are. This is forever a change, and we had to choose whether we want it to be a positive change or that supports life of human beings and everything that we're a part of that allows our life,
hmm.
or not. So I'm excited to be part of this,
Yeah.
even though it's hard to see especially, well, all of them to die. The elders is really hard for Indigenous people because they're
Yeah.
the wisdom keepers. But seeing the babies hurting too now, so it's that dilemma. It's like, okay, you little virus, you're teaching us something, and together, I know we're going to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you getting on this call with me. And, I don't know where it's going to go. All these things have their own lives. But
Yeah.
I hope that if people encounter our interaction, that they'll connect with either me, you, or both of us, and they'll try to deepen their relationships and
Yeah.
understand their connection to everything. And that no matter what our differences are, there is something that we all are breathing. We're all in this.
We're
And
all in it.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing and spending your time. And if anyone checks this out, I want you to check out For Sacred Gifts, and it's also an Audible version, so you can listen to it on audio too. And
Oh, thank you.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for taking the time. I know.
Yeah, always good to see you, Pedro.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Talk to you later.